Wait, once I made sure I'm recording, I should be recording now. Alrighty, right. It is 2106 on the 10th and the 1st of January. Well, not 1st of January. The 1st month of January is what I meant to say, of 2025. And I thought, I have a bunch of books. Right, something just crawled over my foot. So making sure it wasn't like a spider or something. There we go. Alright, this is getting delayed. I do apologise there. Sorry if you heard me tapping my feet on the ground. But I have a bag here full of short stories, and I thought I might as well go through them one at a time. Here we have a Winnie the Pooh storybook. Tigger is Unbounced. A.A. Milne. Illustrated by Ernest H. Shepard. There's actually many books here. And this was originally sold for 50 pence. From a gift aid product. So it looks like it was given out for people that, needed some aid. Someone took a orange crayon to the inside. Oh, kids, I tell you. Tigger is Unbounced. So this is a Winnie the Pooh book. Has a little picture of Christopher. What's his name? Not Christopher Nolan. That's an actor. Or the projector? No, director. Oh, my speaking's just not the best today, I tell you. The writer who first written Winnie the Pooh, and a tiny piglet and a Pooh Bear about his shirt. The shirt was added later, I tell you. Alright, Tigger is Unbounced. One day, Rabbit and Piglet were sitting outside Pooh's front door, listening to Rabbit and Pooh. And Pooh was sitting with them. It was a drowsy summer afternoon, and the forest was full of gentle sounds, which all seemed to be saying to Pooh, "Don't listen to Rabbit, listen to me." So he got into a comfortable position for not listening to Rabbit. From time to time he opened his eyes to say "ah", and then closed them again to say "true". And from time to time Rabbit said, "You see what I mean, Piglet?" very earnestly, and Piglet nodded earnestly to show that he did. Oh, they're little snoozing against a little flower and all that. "In fact," said Rabbit, counting to the end of it at last, Tigger's getting so bouncy nowadays that it's time we taught him a lesson. Don't you think so, Piglet?" Piglet said that Tigger was very bouncy, and that if they could think of a way of unbouncing him, it would be a very good idea. "Just what I feel," said Rabbit. "What do you say, Pooh?" Pooh opened his eyes with a jerk and said, "Extremely." "Extremely what?" asked Rabbit. "What were you saying?" said Pooh. "Undoubtedly." Piglet gave Pooh a stiffening sort of nudge, and Pooh, who felt more and more that he was somewhere else, got up slowly and began to look for himself. "But how shall we do it?" asked Piglet. "What sort of lesson, Rabbit?" "That's the point," said Rabbit. The word "lesson" came back to Pooh as one he had heard before somewhere. "There's a thing called twice times," he said. "Christopher Robin, that's his name, tried to teach it to me once, but it didn't." "What didn't?" said Rabbit. "Didn't what?" said Piglet. Pooh shook his head. "Oh, is it like times table or something?" "No, twice times." I'm not sure what that word is. I don't know, he said. It just didn't. What are you talking? What are we talking about? Pooh said Piglet. Pooh said Piglet, reproachfully. I can never speak the now, I tell you. It really annoys me sometimes. Alright, I'll hold it with one hand. The light keeps getting in the way as well. Alright, reproachfully. Haven't you been listening to what Rabbit was saying? I listened, but I had a small piece of fluff in my ear. Could you say it again, please, Rabbit? Rabbit never minded saying things again. So he asked where he should begin from, and when Pooh had said from the moment when the fluff got in his ear, and Rabbit asked when that was, and Pooh had said he didn't know because he hadn't heard properly, Piglet settled it all by saying that what they were trying to do. Also, I realised that there's a green crayon there. They were trying to do was they were trying to think of a way to get the bounce out of Tigger, because however much you liked him, couldn't deny it, he did bounce. Oh, I see, said Pooh. There's too much of him, said Rabbit. That's what it comes to. Pooh tried to think, and all he could think of was something which didn't help at all. So he hummed very quietly to himself. If Rabbit was bigger and fatter and stronger, or bigger than Tigger, if Tigger was smaller, then Tigger was bad habit of bouncing at Rabbit would matter no longer. If Rabbit was taller. What was Pooh saying? Asked Rabbit. Any good? No, said Pooh. Sadly, no good. Well, I got an idea, said Rabbit, and here it is. We take Tigger for a long... Oh, there's a lot of orange crayon on this page. Exploring somewhere where he's never been. And we lose him there, and next morning we find him again, and mark my words, he'll be different, Tigger altogether. Why, said Pooh? Because he'll be a humble Tigger, because he'll be a sad Tigger, a melancholy Tigger, a small and sorry Tigger. Oh, and in old Rabbit, I am so glad to see you, Tigger. That's why. Will he be glad to see me? And Piglet too? Of course, that's good, said Pooh. I should hate him to go on being sad, said Piglet doubtfully. Tiggers never go on being sad. Ah, right. Sorry, it was a very, there was some crayon there, and then I was trying to figure out, how does it sound? Explained Rabbit. They get over it. I accidentally put another bit from a little bit, below it onto it. Rabbit, they never, why did I put never in there again? They get over it with astonishing rapidity. I asked Owl just to make sure, and he said that that's what they always get over it with. But if we can we'll make Tigger feel small and sad just for 5 minutes, we shall have done a good deed. Would Christopher Robin think so? Asked Piglet. Yes, said Rabbit. He'd say you've done a good deed, Piglet. I would have done it myself, only I happened to be doing something else. Thank you, Piglet. And Pooh, of course. Piglet felt very glad about this, and he saw at once that what they were going to do, to Tigger was a good thing to do. It's not. And as Pooh and Rabbit were doing it with him, it was a thing which even a very small animal could wake up in the morning and be comfortable about doing. So the only question was, where should they lose Tigger? We'll take him to the North Pole, said Rabbit, because it was a very long explore finding it. So it will be a very long explore for Tigger on finding it again. It was now Pooh's turn to feel very glad, because it was he who'd first found the North Pole, and when they got there, Tigger would see a notice which said, "Discovered by Pooh, Pooh found it." And then Tigger would know, which perhaps he didn't know, the sort of bear Pooh was. That sort of bear. So it was arranged that they should start next morning, and that Rabbit, who lived near Kanga and Roo, and Tigger should now go home and ask Tigger what he was doing tomorrow. Because if he wasn't doing anything, what about coming for an explore? And getting Pooh and Piglet to come too. And if Tigger said yes, that would be all right. And if he said no, he won't, said Rabbit, leave it to me. And he went off busily. The next day was quite a different day. Instead of being hot and sunny, it was cold and misty. Pooh didn't mind for himself, but when he thought of all the honey the bees wouldn't be making, a cold and misty day always made him feel sorry for them. He said so to Piglet when Piglet came to fetch him, and Piglet said that he wasn't thinking of that so much, but of how cold and miserable it would be being lost all day and night on top of the forest. But when he and Pooh had got to Rabbit's house, Rabbit said it was just the day for them, because Tigger always bounced on ahead of everybody, and as soon as he got out of sight, they would hurry away in the other direction, and he would never see them again. Not never. Well, not until we find him again. Piglet tomorrow, or whenever it comes on, he's waiting for us. When they got to Kanga's house, they found that Roo was waiting too, being great friend of Tigger's, which made it awkward, but Rabbit whispered, "Leave this to me," behind his paw to Pooh, and went up to Kanga. "I don't think Roo had better come," he said. "Not today." "Why not?" said Roo, who wasn't supposed to be listening. "Nasty cold day," said Rabbit, shaking his head. "And you were coughing this morning." "How do you know?" asked Roo indignantly. "Oh, Roo, you never told me," said Kanga reproachfully. "It was a biscuit cough," said Roo. "Not one to tell about." "I think not today, dear. Another day, tomorrow," said Roo hopefully. "We'll see, Kanga. You always seeing and nothing ever happens," said Roo sadly. "Nobody could see on a day like this, Roo," said Rabbit. "I don't expect we shall get very far, and then this afternoon Tigger, there you are. Come on. Goodbye, Roo. This afternoon will come on. Pooh, already? That's right, come on." So they went. At first, Pooh and Rabbit and Piglet walked together, and Tigger ran round them in circles. And then, when the path got narrower, Rabbit and Piglet and Pooh walked one after another, and Tigger ran round them in oblongs. And by and by, when the gorse got very prickly on each side of the path, Tigger ran up and down in front of them, and sometimes he bounced into Rabbit, and sometimes he didn't. And as they got higher, the mist got thicker, so that Tigger kept disappearing, and then when you thought he wasn't there, there he was again, saying, "I say, come on," and before you could say anything, there he wasn't. Rabbit turned round and nudged Piglet. "Next time," he said, "tell Pooh." "Next time," said Piglet to Pooh. "Next time what?" said Pooh to Piglet. Tigger appeared suddenly, bounced into Rabbit, and disappeared again. "Now," said Rabbit, "he jumped into a hollow by the side of the path, and Pooh and Piglet jumped after him. They crouched in the bracken, listening. The forest was very silent. When you stopped and listened to it, they could see nothing and hear nothing. "Shh," said Rabbit. "I am," said Pooh. There was a patterned noise, then silence again. "Hello," said Tigger, and he sounded so close suddenly that Piglet would have jumped if Pooh hadn't accidentally been sitting on him most of the time. "Where are you?" called Tigger. Rabbit nudged Pooh, and Pooh looked about for Piglet to nudge, but couldn't find him, and Piglet went on breathing wet bracken as quietly as he could, and felt very brave and excited. "That's funny," said Tigger. There was a moment's silence, and then they heard him pattering off again. For a little longer they waited until the forest had become so still that it almost frightened them. And then Rabbit got up and stretched himself. "Well," he whispered proudly, "there we are, just as I said. I've been thinking," said Pooh. "And I think no," said Rabbit. "Don't run. Come on." They all hurried off, Rabbit leading the way. "Now," said Rabbit, after they had gone a little way, "we can talk. What were you going to say, Pooh?" "Nothing much. Why are we going along here?" "Because it's the way home." "Oh," said Pooh. "I think it's more to the right," said Piglet nervously. "What do you think, Pooh?" Pooh looked at his two paws. He knew that one of them was the right, and he knew that when you had to decide which one of them was right, then the other one was the left. But he never could remember how to begin. Well, he said slowly, "Come on," and sorry about that. "Come on," said Rabbit. "I know. It's this way." They went on. 10 minutes later they stopped again. "It's very silly," said Rabbit, "but just for a moment." Of course. Come on." "Here we are," said Rabbit. 10 minutes later. "No, we're not. Now," said Rabbit. 10 minutes later. "I think we'd ought to be getting, or are we a little bit more to the right than I thought?" "It's a funny thing," said Rabbit 10 minutes later, "how everything looks the same in the mist. Have you noticed it, Pooh?" Pooh said that he had. "Luckily we know the forest so well, or we might get lost." Rabbit half an hour later, and he gave the careless laugh which you give when you know the forest so well that you can't get lost. Piglet slided up to Pooh from behind. "Pooh," he whispered. "Yes, Piglet?" "Nothing," said Piglet, taking Pooh's paw. "I just wanted to be sure of you." When Tigger had finished waiting for the others to catch him up, and they hadn't. And when he got tired of having nobody to say, come on, to, he thought he would go home, so he trotted back. And the first thing Kanga said when she saw him was, there's a good tiger. You're just in time for your strengthening medicine. And she poured it out for him. Roo said proudly, I've had mine. And Tigger swallowed his, and said, so have I. And then he and Roo pushed each other about in a friendly way, and Tigger accidentally knocked over one of the two chairs by accident, and Roo accidentally knocked over one on purpose. And Kanga said, now then, run along. Where shall we run along to? Asked Roo. You can go and collect some fir cones for me, said Kanga, giving them a basket. So they went to the 6 pine trees and threw fir cones at each other until they had forgotten what they came for, and they left the basket under the tree and went back to dinner. And it was just as they were finishing dinner that Christopher Robin put his head in the door. Where's Pooh? He asked. Tigger dear, where's Pooh? Said Kanga. Tigger explained what had happened at the same time that Roo was explaining about his biscuit cough, and Kanga was telling him not to both talk at once. So it was some time before Christopher Robin guessed that Pooh and Piglet and Rabbit were all lost in the mist on top of the forest. It's a funny thing about Tiggers, whispered Tigger to Roo. How Tiggers never get lost. Why don't they, Tigger? They just don't, explained Tigger. That's how it is. Well, said Christopher Robin, we shall have to go find them. That's all. Come on, Tigger. I shall have to go and find them, explained Tigger to Roo. May I find them too? Asked Roo eagerly. I think not today, dear, said Kanga. Another day. Well, if they're lost tomorrow, may I find them? We'll see, said Kanga. And Roo, who knew what that meant, went into a corner and practiced jumping out at himself, partly because he wanted to practice this, and partly because he didn't want Christopher Robin and Tigger to think that he minded when they went off without him. The fact is, said Rabbit, we missed our way somehow. They were having a rest in a small sand pit on the top of the forest. Pooh was getting rather tired of that sand pit and suspected it of following them about, because whichever direction they started in, they always ended up at it, and each time as it came through the mist at them, Rabbit said triumphantly, now I know where we are, and Pooh said sadly, so do I, and Piglet said nothing. He had tried to think of something to say, but the only thing he could think of was help, help, and it seemed silly to say that when he had Pooh and Rabbit with him. Well, said Rabbit, after a long silence, which nobody thanked him for the nice walk they were having, we'd better get on, I suppose. Which way shall we try? How would it be, said Pooh, if as soon as we're out of sight of the pit, we try to find it again? What's the good of that? Said Rabbit. Well, said Pooh, we keep looking for home and not finding it, so I thought that if we looked for the pit, we'd be sure not to find it, which would be a good thing, because then we might find something that we weren't looking for, which might be what we were looking for. Really, I don't see much sense in that, said Rabbit. No, said Pooh. Pooh? His name's now Pooh. Pooh humbly. There isn't, but there was going to be when I begin it. began it. It's just that something happened to it on the way. If I walked away from this pit and then walked back to it, of course I should find it. Well, I thought perhaps you wouldn't, said Pooh. I just thought try, said Piglet. Suddenly, we'll wait here for you. Also, a little bit of fact, you can take the sand and make a trail with the sand. There's probably a lot of sand in that box, and you can make a thin trail that if it's not windy, then it should stay in sight because it's sand in a forest. There's not much sand apart from on the sand of a bank, so you should be perfectly fine. Alright. Rabbit gave a laugh to show how silly Piglet was, and walked into the mist. After he had gone 100 yards, he turned and walked back again, and after Pooh and Piglet had waited 20 minutes for him, Pooh got up and just said, Pooh, now then, Piglet, let's go home. But Pooh, cried Piglet, all excited, do you know the way? No, said Pooh, but there are 12 pots of honey in my cupboard, and they've been calling for me for hours now. I couldn't hear them properly before because Rabbit would talk, but if nobody says anything except those 12 pots, I think, Piglet, I shall know where they're coming from. Come on. They walked off together, and for a long time Piglet said nothing, so as not to interrupt the pots, and then suddenly he had made a squeaky noise and a ooh noise, because now he began to know where he was, but he still didn't dare to say it out loud, in case he wasn't. And just when he was getting so sure of himself that it didn't matter whether the pots went on calling or not, there was a shout from them in front of them. And out of the mist came Christopher Robin. Oh, there you are, said Christopher Robin carelessly, trying to pretend that he hadn't been anxious. Here we are, said Pooh. Where's Rabbit? I don't know, said Pooh. Oh well, I expect Tigger will find him. He's sort of looking for you all. Well, said Pooh, I've got to go home for something, and so Piglet, because we haven't had it yet, and I'll come and watch you, said Christopher Robin. So he went home with Pooh and watched him for quite a long time, and all the time he was watching, Tigger was tearing round the forest, making loud yapping noises for Rabbit, and at last a very small and sorry Rabbit heard him, and the small and sorry Rabbit rushed through the mist at the noise, and it suddenly turned into Tigger, a friendly Tigger, a grand Tigger, a large and helpful Tigger, and a Tigger who bounced if he bounced at all, in just the most beautiful way a Tigger ought to bounce. Oh, Tigger, I'm glad to see you, cried Rabbit. The end. The story was originally published in 1928. Almost 100 years ago. In about 3 years, it will be 100 years since this story was originally, sent out. This book that I'm reading now is a reprint from 1995 or 1991, I'm not sure. It was either 1991 or 1995, not sure. But hopefully you did enjoy that, I tell you. Hopefully you did enjoy that. I got plenty more. We got quite a lot, and we got some other books there to read. But that is where we shall end this episode for today. So, hopefully you enjoyed this. Have a nice day, safe, here's some next devices, very important. And bye, see you next time. Bye, see you, bye bye.